Hey guys, we are starting with chapter 27. So we just found out that tattoo on Zane's wrist really wasn't a tattoo. It was a tracking device. And Al Pooch has found them and the twins. Let's continue on. Chapter 27. You did this. Jordan's granite face looked like it might crumble. The mark continued to burn, the skull's sleeping eyes fluttering as if they might open any second. My heart thrashed against my ribs. I jerked my sleeve over the tattoo and stood. You were stupid enough to make a deal with the god of death, Bird said with a smirk. I wish I could wipe it off his face. Al Pooch laughed. Come on now, Juniper. Let's be a gentleman about this. Jordan's eyes raked over Al Pooch with so much hatred. I thought puke might melt and we could all go home. Did you really think your pathetic magic could keep me out? Al Pooch said to the twins. Your little sandcastle isn't as strong as you imagined. Jordan's jaw tightened as he looked around at the broken piece of the illusionary world. The shattered walls, the splintered skies, the distant skyscrapers began to sway away. Such a poor imitation. Al Pooch said, following his gaze. Did you come here for a fight, Al Pooch? Bird's tone told me he wanted Al Pooch to say yes. Boys, please, Al Pooch says. I didn't come here to fight. Simply to destroy your little, what shall we call it? He took it in halfway, finished the demolition. Bubble? And to set the record straight, his voice rose with a few godly notches for the next pop. You never defeated me, only a couple of my weak underlords. The world tilted. Surely that was wrong. Surely I hadn't replied on a plan that was built on empty boasts. We beat you, Bird said through his gritted teeth. Al Pooch stroked Muan's head. Your lies are such bitter little things, and to think I was locked away, unable to refuse them. Hardly justice. Wouldn't you agree, Zane? I gave a short nod. I mean, it really was a raw deal. Why would Jordan and Bird lie? To establish their fame, their notary? Puke said in the commanding tone to ensure that no other Godborns would ever challenge them. He turned to his hardened gaze on the twins. I do admire your sinister plan, he said to them. Lie about defeating me, inspire humans to ignore the gods, instill enough fear in the gods to make them create the sacred oath. That way you've never have any competition. I processed each bit of information, and it all made sense. Jordan and Bird had manipulated the gods into taking the sacred oath. I remembered what Pacific had said about the twins, inspiring jealousy in the gods. But if the gods were so worried about the god borns, they didn't eat. Why didn't they kill the twins? I asked. Very on point. Bravo, Al Pooch said, smiling. The twins used their popularity amongst humans as leverage in a deal with the gods. Jordan and Bird promised to go on a PR tour, encouraging humans to revere the gods again, to restore balance. The man that was messed up, I thought, but it did surprise me now that I'd seen their ugliness up close. Jordan and Bird shared a glance. Beads of sweat formed on Jordan's forehead. Was fear getting the best of him? No, this was something more serious. He clawed at the throat, his eyes bugged out, and he collapsed. Bird squatted next to his brother, pressing on his chest, calling his name over and over. He glared at Al Pooch. I don't know how you did this, but I will make you pay. For instance, surprised registered on Al Pooch's face. That told me all I needed to know. It wasn't him. It was La Muerte. The chili pepper really had worked. A little late, but she'd work. I wanted to slip away before the truth was discovered. But how could I? Worth with Hondo passed out. Brooke gripped my wrist so hard her nails dug into my skin. This is going to be really, really bad. You think? I said. Then, if I said, if I don't make it, I'm not listening. Make sure Hondo gets out, please. Muwan lifted Al Pooch's shoulder, flew across the stadium, and in one swoop snatched up a snake with her talons and flipped it into her mouth. My stomach turned. Bird looked wounded, like the snakes were BFFs. And a second later, the rest of the red reptiles evaporated with the snap of his finger. We're going to destroy you, Bird said to Alpooch. We? Apparently not, Alpooch said coolly, looking at the comatose Jordan. But I'll let you try your best. In the meantime, I have some plans of my own. Why did I have the feeling my name was written on those plans? Muwan shifted into her human form, same dress, same bronze skin, same stranger smile. You're too afraid to fight, old man, Bird provoked. I'm not the one trembling, Alpooch said with a calm but deadly glare. Then his gaze turned on me, and I didn't like what I saw. Someone ready to collect what he was owed? I inched back. It wasn't time yet. Still, I had a whole day to figure out how to stop him, but how? I gripped the jade into my pocket for security, carefully, not to will myself to empty and leave my body with monsters that wanted to see me dead. Suddenly, three huge black winged creatures swooped down. They had human heads that were too small for their massive bodies. Like Mulan, they sported slick black feathers, razor sharp talons, and wings with 15-foot spans. The creatures were identical to each other, bald, plates, sharp chins, bulging veins in their necks and foreheads like the blood was too thick. The only difference was that each had eyes that glowed a different color: yellow, orange, purple. Bird tried to make a run for it, but the yellow and purple eyed monster moved like lightning, snatching him. Then Jordan in their huge wings and cocooning them tightly so that their heads poked out. You remember the yanteo triad? Surely, Pooch addressed Bird in his self-satisfying tone. Allow me introduce you to Yanteo, Yuskaskan, and Utinis, otherwise known as the good, bad, and indifferent. Except we all know that there isn't any good. But it sure rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Bird thrashed, trying to break free, but the only thing that got loose were the curses he spat at El Pooch. As words flew from his mouth, they turned into silver daggers, aimed at his nemesis. Muan batted them away easily. Jordan was a lifeless doll in the wings of his monster. I thought about Huracan. I mean, if Puke hated the twins for lying about beating him, imagine how much he hated my dad for sticking him in that prison for 100 years. Yep, this was going to get ugly. What had Huracan said? Inconvincible, skinny kid versus god of death, some match. The gods will unite against you, Bird said with a grunt. Yes, the gods, Alpooch said casually. Last I checked, they were already in a war with their ranks, trying to figure out who could have set me free. Tisk, tisk, tisk. You really can't trust anyone these days, can you now? Alpooch turned to me. As for you, Zane, Bird narrowed his eyes at me like he just remembered I was there. This is your fault, human. Alpooch hesitated, as if deciding how much he wanted to say. He's no human, he said slowly, like he wanted to savor the shock and register it on Bird's face. But we could talk about that later, can't we, Zane? I didn't think it could get any words past the lump in my throat, but somehow I managed. Uh-huh. I'm human. I mean, sure, yeah, later. But I was so hoping there wouldn't be later. I'd rather disappear, hole up in the Caribbean anywhere. Except that wasn't me, not anymore. I holed up at home for a whole year because I was too afraid to face the kid at school, too afraid to see the way they looked at my leg, too afraid to try and be somebody more than the names they threw at me. Well, those days were over. I had told Pacific I'd never hide, and I meant it, even if it meant going down, or at least I'd do the fighting. So, the gimp's not human? Bird finally muttered. I could see his mental gears clicking into place, but not before Al Pooch started to laugh. I mean, a giant, uproarious laugh that shook the stone walls and could have registered a 10 on the Richter scale. The creatures gripping the twins smiled. Their teeth were black, like they'd been stained with ink. Their breath smelled worse than any rotting meat in July. Their ground trembled. The stone walls began to crumble. The skyscrapers in the distance fell in giant columns of smoke and dust. And in a few more minutes, this place would be completely destroyed. The creatures holding Bird and Jordan folded their wings tighter and tighter. Each of the twins' face puckered like little heads that were being sucked dry. Their skin turned gray and their purplish veins spread beneath. Their eyeballs bulged out and turned dark red. Don't kill them, I shouted. This is going to be good. And that was Brooks, still gripping my hand. You can't be serious. You're no fun. Al Pooch turned to me. Trust me, I'm not generous enough to kill them quickly. Then, to good, bad, and indifferent, he said, take them away. Their magic will make a lovely feast for us. The triad took flight, carrying the twins into the falling sky. Al Pooch started to fade. Wait, I called him. You tricked me. This mark. He stopped and looked at me. Clever, yes. You can't run and you can't hide unless I burn off this tattoo. The magic runs deep and you aren't brave enough to withstand that kind of pain. Al Pooch sighed. I'll see you soon, Zane Osbino. He gazed around the collapsing world and said, very soon, judging from this house of cards. Chapter 28. Brooke shook my arm. We have to get out of here. Help me with Hondo, I shouted over the falling debris. But even both of us in our efforts, he was dead weight. No way we were going to get him out before the plane crashed all around us. The place crashed all around us. This was not going to end. Not in a dollhouse of Jordan's making. Brooke's eyes shifted, and the gold ambers flecks glowing like they might ignite any second. And in an instant, she looked like a hawk herself. Mythical and even dangerous. Go, I told her. Save yourself. Not without you. Why was she so stubborn? At the same moment, a very large figure emerged from the cloud of black and gray dust. Jazz! I guessed you all might have some problems, he yelled. I put some midi cams in your clothes, and what a show it's been. Jazz scooped up Hondo like a sack of chilies and hoisted him on his shoulder. We've got a boat to catch. I've never been so happy to see somebody in my whole life. Brooks and I hurried behind him, but he didn't head for the exit. I figured he was already demolished. Instead, he went to the roof edge. And let me tell you, it was hard to keep up with a giant whose strides were like 10 yards, especially since my stupid limp was back. The time limit on our enchantment had run out. Gusts of cold winds raged across the broken world. Umbrellas tumbled, trees split to twos, glass shattered. I looked over the edge, wondering where my safety net was, or maybe we were waiting for the helicopter. My answer came within seconds. An enormous flying machine with a giant red sail rose from the darkness, and you wouldn't believe who was driving. The skeleton, Flacco. Really? This was our ride out of here? Tickets, please, he said, circling in what looked like a four-seater go-kart with a small engine near the back. Jazz grunted. Get closer. The roof quaked, splitting the cement. Next time he circles and jumps, hold on tight, Jazz boomed. Was he kidding? Jump? Couldn't Flacco land? Then I realized the roof was going to give any second. Brooks grabbed my hand. Don't fall, I'll do my best. On the count of 3, Jazz said, gripping Hondo's hand with one arm. Forget the count, I hollered. Let's get out of here. The wind groaned angrily. Trees bent and writhed, with a massive black hole in the sky, sucking everything into it. Even the oxygen. Flacco circled back closer and closer to the edge. He was only 3 feet away. Let's fly, Brooke shouted. Easy for her to say. She was Pop Hawk. 2, Jazz shouted. Wait, what happened to 1? I imagined myself as a jaguar with the power of those muscular back legs. Flacco was close enough that it wouldn't take much of a leap. I could do this. 3! We launched ourselves into the air. I was as good. I used my good leg, thrusting myself with all I had. At the last second, a gust of wind jerked the glider to the right. I came up short, barely latching onto the side rail. Everyone was tucked safely in the flying go-kart. Whatever, and me, I was dangling off to the side. Brooks leaned over the edge. Zane, what are you doing? Just enjoying the view. Don't let go, I told myself. Don't let go. Take my hand. I was scared, I admit it, but I couldn't hang on to the side of this thing for long. So with a deep breath, I reached up and grabbed hold of her hand. She hauled me into the glider, where I clung to the seat for dear life. No time. There will be a thriller seeker, she seeked, shaking her head. Yeah, I groaned. Thrill. You okay? Jazz called from the front seat. Hondo was still sagging over his shoulder. I nodded, trying to get control of my breath. Good driving, F, Flacco said. Who knew skeletons could beam with pride? The engine whirled as we burst through the sheet of cold silver lights, leaving the broken imitation of the world behind us. It was like passing through a waterfall without water. We sailed high above Santa Monica, over traffic-packed streets, lit up with the red taillights. A dark-haired woman was pushing a stroller below. She walked with a small skip in her step. Like my mom, I wondered if she was back home yet. What had she said to Hurricane to get him to help me? Had she always known where to find him? I need to sleep so I could talk to Miss Cab. And I asked her to check on my mom. Then I realized the eyeballs were in my backpack, which was still at Jazz. Where are we going? I shouted. To your place. That's safe there, Jazz hollered back. I need my eyeballs, I screamed, immediately realizing how stupid it sounded. Whoa, 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 Brooks leaned halfway out of the glider. Faster! Blacko jives. I felt sick as I gripped the edge of my seat. The salt air was my first clue we were headed back to the beach. Then when we got closer to the sand, I thought we were at land, but Flacco kept going right over the water, farther and farther towards the dark horizon. Brooks wasn't leaning out anymore. Brooks tapped Jazz on the shoulder. What are we doing here? Coming in for a landing, Jazz says. Might get a little wet. Jump when I say so, Flacco said. I can't swim, Brooks shouted. I could feel her panic as she tensed up for the first time since we had taken flight. Below was a double-leveled boat, too small for us to land on. So dark the dark sea it was. I got you, I said, thinking in a disaster like last time. We plunged into the unknown waters. Brooks paled and shook her head. Don't let go, she said. I promise. Flacco hovered about 5 feet over the water. Jump! He flew away as we dropped into the water, freezing currents. I kept a hold of Brooks, which wasn't too hard because she clawed her way into my shoulder, pushing me down in a frenzy. Keeping my calm, I opened my mind and let her in. I need you to chill out or we're going to drown. She relaxed her death grip a little bit and clung to my back as I swam towards the boat. Jazz lifted us on board, where warm, dry towels were waiting, along with some snacks. A cooler filled with cherry cokes and a sack containing gummy worms. The pizza pockets. All of our belongings were already on the vinyl bench. I hurried over and I was relieved to find Miss Cav's eyeball still tucked safely in my backpack. But when I saw my old boring cane, my heart sank. I wish he'd left that behind. Jazz took Hondo below to the cabin where he could sleep off the poison. While Brooks and I huddled under the blanket at the stern, the boat looked like it was a fixer-upper finishing a vessel with rusting rails, pitted deck and covered second deck with a steering wheel seated in some gears. I stole the soda from the cooler, but didn't drink any. My stomach was twisted in knots. I'd failed, wasted too much time on a stupid idea, and now I had nothing. No plan, no powers, no futures. The gods were ready to start over. Something I had done, and Hondo was suffering in pain, worse than death, while we sat around under the stars. Hurricane had been right when he had said what lies ahead is inconceivable. A cool breeze drifted over us as the boat rocked gently in the waters. The night replayed in my mind so fast I wasn't sure any of us had, and this had really had happened. Why, did Jazz bring us here? I asked. Must not be safe at the Venice beach, Brooke said, shifting as she sipped her coke. I stared into the darkness. Where do you think Puke took Jordan and Bird? Wherever it is, Brooke said, the jerks deserve it. I knew they were rotten, but I can't believe they lied about defeating Al Pooch. I I take it back. I can totally believe it. Man, they'd do anything for fame and power. Okay, Bird and Jordan were jerks. But man, getting smothered by those oily, smelly black wings and cut it off like a couple of corpses and seemed tragic. I really want to know, I said. Brooks rolled her eyes. I have no idea. Where would you take your sworn enemies if you were the god of death, darkness, and destruction? And somebody had moved you into the castle. Probably a putrid pit filled with vicious rats and killer ants that would eat your eyeballs out. Brooks let out a light laugh. That's sick, you know that. You asked. La Luna was a wedge clinging to the sky. I only had one moon left until Alpooch came to collect on our deal. Brooks, she turned away from me. I twisted my hands together. Something's bad's coming, isn't it? When I met Huracan, he saw the mark on my wrist. Why was this so hard to talk about? So, he said, I have to be the one to stop Puke because my life is now tied to his. Because I was the one who let him out. And if I don't, Brooke swiveled to face me. Her eyes burned fiercely. You'll end up a soldier of death, even if the gods kill him. Heat prickled my spine, and I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. That about sums it up. I stood, I took a deep breath. I have to tell them. Tell who? I can't tell the gods to go to war over something I did. Brooks jumped up and grabbed my arm. No, Zane, that would be like double suicide. Are you trying to die? No, not exactly. She paced with her usual look of determination, but that wasn't going to get me out of this dilemma. The gods want this war, she said. They've been looking for a reason to start one. You tell them now it wouldn't be worth it. How do you know? You heard Jazz. We had peace for too long. Brooks huffed. Nakan's been waiting for this. I remember the name, the god of war. He's always hungry for blood, and he's been itching for a fight, but never had a good excuse until now. So without you, Zane, the gods are going to battle it out. Don't you see? Telling them would be a huge mistake. It won't change anything. I nodded, and we sat in silence after that. Each of us mentally tried to unlock the door we didn't have the key for. All of those people, I finally said, from the party, are they dead? Jazz appeared from the cabin now. From what I saw on the mini cams, I think they got out. They won't even remember where they were. They'll think it was another earthquake or they'll have killer hangovers. Brooke froze. I can't believe you spied on us with all those mini cams. And here, I thought you'd be thanking me, Jazz said. He shouldn't have lied like that. I was Godborn. I thought back. Had we ever mentioned it or anything else that might get him into trouble? Thank Jazz, I said. You were right. Those guys are jerks. Did you hear what they said to Hondo? Jazz narrowed her eyes. Don't make me feel bad. The cams don't have audio, okay? I'm still working on that technology. My muscles relaxed and Brooks let out a long breath. How's my uncle? I asked Jazz. Worried that Hondo would be tormented for hours. He'll survive, the giant said, shaking his head. Won't be too happy when he wakes up, but it'll wear off eventually. After what the twins had done to Hondo, I couldn't even think about them without hate bubbling up inside of me. So I didn't know where to begin. Where are we going? The boat lurched and I began moving through the waters. I looked up to the second level, but no one was piloting. Jazz's face split into a broad smile. Captain's herself, he said proudly. Let me guess, I said. Magic? A deep frown formed. No, Advanced Giant Engineering, AGE. It's the company I'm going to start once I have enough capital. He pulled a bottle of what looked like chocolate milk out of the cooler. Chocolate from Ikaswa. Want some? It's a new recipe. I took some and guzzled it, hoping it would make me feel as good as before. It was liquid velvet. and even sweeter than the last batch, if that was possible. Jazz popped off the lid and swigged the whole bottle and let out a large burp. He said, I've got some real bad news, little hawk. What could be worse than? I stopped myself, not wanting to reveal too much to him. Tell us, Brooks said to Jazz. After you went to the fiesta, I got a letter hand delivered, but I don't know who it's from. What'd it say? I asked. He pointed to me. Take you to the old world. My body tensed up. The letter was probably from Hurricane. He had said that I should look for the white spark striker there. The guards are on the verge of declaring war. Jazz went on. No one's fessing up to be breaking the secret of the sacred oath, and Pooch is running loose, creating all sorts of trouble. The gods can't even agree on how to deal with him. He let out a frustrated breath. Things are bad, little hawk, and they're about to get a whole lot worse. Brooks balled her fists. My heart began to slam against my ribs. I couldn't let the gods get to Pooch first. Do you know how to get to the old world? I asked the giant. The only way is through the gateway. Brooke started searching frantically through her stuff. Have you seen the rolled up piece of paper? She asked Jazz. Something that looks like a drawing with lines on it. Jazz reached into a compartment and pulled out a scroll. You mean this? The gateway map. With a shrug, Jazz said sheepishly, I snooped, sorry. It was an emergency. Brooke snatched the map from him and unfurled it. Her eyes scanned it wildly. It's gone, she frowned. Did you break it? Dark? What do you mean? I asked, now shivering. Jazz raised his eyebrows, looking insulted. No, I didn't break it. All the gateway maps are off the grid now. Portables are closed, he said. The guards are limiting travel so they can find you know who. Brooks continued to scan the map like it might come to life any second. Her dark hair swirled around her face as the wind whipped past. How are we going to find the gateway then? My old friend holds up the sky, Jazz remembered. And Jazz rolled his eyes and pointed to the obvious. I know things, he said. Things like before, when there were maps. These were ancient gateways, secrets, the magical routes the gods use. These portables aren't closed. Oops, I lost my place. Aren't closed. I mean, they're a little rusty and not as pleasant as the modern ones, but they'll do their job. That was right. Hurricane had said that the babkas used to work for him. It was all starting to come together. Why aren't they closed? I asked. Part of the original deal, Jazz says. The creator of gods made four, one in each hemisphere, and they're all permanent as the sun and the moon meets, or at least until Pooch burns it all up. Creator of gods. That would be Hurricane and Kusamats. Okay, I said. So there's one around here, not too far, according to my coordinates. We can be there by tomorrow night, Jazz said proudly. This boat is a high-powered devil. It might even get us there a couple hours sooner than that. But we don't have much time, I argued. The deadline is tomorrow when the moon rises. I looked at Brooks and didn't have to read her mind to know what she was thinking. The same thing. Pooch is going to destroy it all before then. Jazz rubbing his chin. Then he stood and puffed, his chest with a big button popped off his purple vest. Well, then that's a good thing where you're in this dilemma with an engineering genius giant, isn't it? Let me get to work on the engine. He turned to leave and hesitated, then said, Cabin's all made up for you. Don't drool on the pillows. Got it? And then he was gone. The end of chapter 28.